when the party was on the edge of one of its occasional nervous breakdowns over Brexit, I think triggered by Brexit, but not necessarily solely caused by that. I think also playing a role was the ambition of people at the top of the party, or at least who wanted to be at the top of the party. And indeed, the starting point for me when I'm thinking about the Conservative Party is always the Queen Mary historian John Ramsden's view of the party, which is that you have to think of it as an autocracy tempered by assassination. I tend to view politics as a combination of ideas, of interests, of institutions, and indeed individuals. So a fair bit of the book, but not all of the book, I hope, is taken up by the kind of court politics or high politics of the Conservative Party. The aim of the book really is to construct a kind of authoritative, hopefully, narrative of what's happened to the party since 2016, albeit with rather fewer F words and C words than some of the other accounts that are also available. In some ways, what I want to do is conduct, and I say this very carefully, given we've got a medic in the room, a kind of living post-mortem, if you like, of the Conservative Party. What I'm trying to do is to anatomise the party, to capture the interaction between the various organs of the party, namely what we call in political science circles anyway, the party on the ground, which is the members, the party in central office, which is CCHQ, in this case the staffers, the party in public office, which is its elected members, and what I call the party in the media, which I think of as the proprietors, the editors, the columnists, who make up what I see as an integral part of the party rather than something that necessarily is external to it. So the aim is to provide a kind of 360-degree account of what's going on the party from top to bottom. What I try and do is really sort of track through the turmoil what I consider as a kind of potential transformation, if you like, from being a mainstream centre-right party towards being what I refer to as an ersatz populist radical right party of the kind that we see in continental Europe, but also obviously UKIP and the Brexit Party, and indeed now Reform UK. And I guess what I wanted to do was to ask, well, was that transformation actually occurring? And if it was, how far it's gone and how and why it's actually happening. Now, I think it's easy to go over the top on this, and it's easy to say that actually any talk of the Conservatives becoming a kind of populist radical right party is over the top. And I myself have often said, I think that we can overdo the parallels between Boris Johnson and Donald Trump. Although I must say, over the last 10 days, I think I've slightly reconsidered that. I think there has been a fair amount of similarity between the two. But I think if you look at the way that people in the party have, since 2016, really denigrated expertise, denigrated the judiciary, denigrated the civil service, talked about this thing called the blob, beat up on the BBC, beat up on universities. I think there is a degree to which there is some idea of a kind of conspiratorial elite which doesn't respect the will of the people and indeed is there in contradistinction to the people, which is the classic kind of populist trope, if you like. I think also the way that people in the party have been inclined to use the word very popular with my students, other migrants and other minorities has been very noticeable as well. And then, of course, there is the democratic backsliding, which people other than me, particularly obviously Meg Russell and people at the Constitution Unit, but not just them, have talked about. So the changing of the remit of the Electoral Commission, the introduction of voter identification, for example, the limits to protests, and indeed, the threat to break the international law, albeit in limited ways. So why has this happened, if it's happened? Well, I think there is there's a long strain of populism within the Conservative Party. You can go right back to the 19th century and look at the way it put itself on the side of, if you like, the brewers versus the temperance movement, to promote the interests of the people, as it were, versus an elite that wanted to curb their normal habits. You can talk about Margaret Thatcher's authoritarian populism, which was the coinage of various academics to explain Thatcherism. And you can go to William Hague's Foreign Land speech, which is a kind of classic piece of populism in a way. But I would say that previously the populism in the Conservative Party has been latent rather than manifest. They flirted with it rather than swallowed it whole. And I do wonder whether now they've swallowed it whole. Now, as to why that might be the case, I think you have to look, first of all, at the electoral threat that the Conservatives face from their right flank since 2010. So there's this pervasive fear, if you like, of being outflanked on the right by UKIP. And one way of avoiding that is by adopting some of the rhetoric and some of the policies of that populist radical right vehicle for Nigel Farage. Brexit, I think, is just one part of that, but there's also this wider culture war, which makes sense. And in some ways, the 2019 election probably has kind of amplified and accelerated that, in the sense that it has opened up the possibility, first opened up really by Theresa May, of a new source of support from less affluent, less educated voters. I think also you'd have to say that Brexit has offered an opportunity for political entrepreneurs, not just Boris Johnson, but what I call the kind of celebrity Brexiteer ultras like Rees-Mogg, all of whom I think like to appeal to the grassroots and very often to their most, if you like, atavistic instincts, because they've also got one eye on the leadership. And I think we have to see also this in the context of a kind of decline in deference in the Parliamentary Conservative Party, which has really been going on for decades, but I think has been accelerated by 24/7 media and social media. I think finally, we do have to talk about the party in the media, which I referred to earlier. I think those kind of populist tropes are common currency for the party in the media, and they have given a much greater platform to these kind of political entrepreneurs that I've been talking about within the party. And they've been especially inclined to denigrate people within the party who object to the kinds of moves that those entrepreneurs have made. So I guess to finish up, the question now is, if this genie is out of the bottle, can it be put back in the bottle? Can, to use another phrase, Pandora's box be closed again? Maybe, to take a kind of benign interpretation, this is just another example, as we've seen over the centuries, of the Conservative Party adjusting to the kind of zeitgeist, and indeed the Conservative Party will then move back into the mainstream. Or, if this is a permanent move towards a more kind of populist radical right formation, what's the future for the party in a country that's becoming more multicultural, more socially liberal?